Hey, good morning. Welcome to Monday. Sean, we got a full day, so we'll just get started, okay?
Good morning, Commissioner Sean Rowe. This morning we're continuing from last Tuesday on our rural development presentations. Once again, time for you to ask any questions, issues, or just general knowledge on the projects. First up today, we have the Cowlitz PUD. I'd invite Steve Taylor up to join me and have a presentation here. Do you want to take the center there? Great.
All right. Good morning, commissioners and staff. We appreciate the opportunity to present our grant application. Eat the mic here. There we go. My name is Steve Taylor, Director of Regulatory and Regional Affairs for Cowlitz PUD, and I have a couple of colleagues with me, but I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Dwayne Dalglish is with us as well. We have Doug Thomas, senior engineer, and also Mike Larson, another senior engineer. These are the guys that are the brains behind the system and build things and keep the electrons flowing throughout the community. So I'll just go ahead and step right into this. Please stop us at any time with questions. Go. What we have here is a project to upgrade the feeder that runs from the Castle Rock substation north along I-5 to exit 52. In summary, this project would replace a little over 4 miles of vintage undersized power lines, and it would replace that with modern distribution transmission double circuit facilities. So it'd be a 115 kV transmission with a 12.5 kV distribution underbuild. The purpose for this, it would expand PUD's capacity to serve commercial and residential electric load growth in the North County, provide for economic development. It would also accommodate deployment of public EV fast charging facilities along I-5, as well as the retail support services for I-5 motorists. And it would also be part of the overall plan to improve service reliability in the North County and lay the foundation for long-term growth and economic development at the northern edge of the service area. The proposed project budget is for the priority phase. You'll see there's 2 different phases that are talked about in this project, but the overall cost is estimated at $4.5 million. That's a conservative cost, the request that we're making today is for $400,000 that would cover for the design and the engineering of the project. Next slide, please. And we'll talk to Mr. Larson here. He can tell us why we need this line.
Good morning. So I'm just going to touch real quickly on capacity, and I'll probably take it back just a little bit of, sort of the basics. So sorry if it gets a little too basic or anything like that. But ultimately, for our electrical infrastructure, capacity is all dependent on where the load lands. So there's a lot of good analogies, honestly, between electricity capacity and road systems and stuff like that, right? So if you have Disneyland land out in the middle of Delameter, the roads and infrastructure out there can't support the kind of traffic and stuff that would be needed, for example, versus something right up against I-5. So I-5 would be like a large conductor and Delameter is just a tiny conductor. And so we're ultimately impacted when it comes to capacity about what's the size of the wires and the conductors and the infrastructure that's in place in that area. The other thing we have to consider with capacity also is we're not looking at today, everything's perfect. All the substations are in, all the feeders are turned on. It's a nice mild temperature outside. Everything's cool and comfy. When we look at capacity, we have to consider it's 108 degrees outside and we have a substation switched out because maintenance need to be done and somebody gets out of control with a vehicle and takes out a pole. So we do what you call an N-2 analysis where we take any 2 facilities out and we need to be able to provide reliable power to the customers that are in that area. So focusing back in on this particular area, this system has got small conductors. We plan for what we call organic growth, so people show up, they're building homes, the load grows slowly over time. Especially up in this area, we historically haven't seen a lot of demand or growth in that area. And so as we've, planned out for the system, we've made plans long-term to make improvements out there. There's some property up off Barnes Drive that we actually just purchased here a year or two ago for an eventual substation up there, recognizing that, well, load's probably going to grow in this direction, and we're kind of out at the end of the power lines for what we have. But when we start talking about larger loads showing up, we've had inquiries in this area for EV charging up at like the Space Age Fuel area. Weyerhaeuser had reached out to us to ask about some facilities they had up there. And right now, the capacity for our system, to be honest with you, we're at about what I'd say is about 25 kW. For that, it's a super hot day, a bunch of stuff switched out, which is about enough for about 3 or 4 homes. So we have been making plans to make some improvements out there. But we have some commercial loads that have been inquiring and stuff like that. And when they start to see what the cost is to make these improvements, it ends up not being cost effective for them. So they end up, going, well, all right, call us again later on when you guys have got more infrastructure in place. So, so that's what we're talking about for capacity in that area. So
Basically, the line is at capacity.
the line is at capacity. So
Did you say 3 or 4 homes or 3 or 400 homes?
homes, 3
3
or
or
4
4.
homes.
Wow.
So
And it's that incremental cost for the next development that wants to come in. It'd be different if you have, let's say, a large manufacturer is going to come in, make $100 million investment. They could build a good portion of what's needed. But if you have a retail or commercial business or even a new home development wanting to come in, the cost to upgrade the facility would be prohibitive for that development. So it does, in effect, stop any kind of meaningful growth out there until the new line can be served.
And actually, I'd say real quick too, is honestly, is prior to Space Age showing up, right? So that was kind of the first sort of larger load that showed up out there. The growth was slow out there. So when Space Age landed and really took off and getting going in business, this is when it really started to highlight this area as we started looking at things and kind of going, all right, we need to start making some improvements up there. So we're planning for those. But much like a lot of other public infrastructure, those upgrades and stuff don't happen overnight, right? So we have to plan for these things and kind of lay out some budgeting and some costs and stuff like that to make these improvements and stuff like that. So that's where we're kind of moving along here now. So
Next slide, please. And if we can, for Mr. Thomas, talk about the project itself.
Yeah, as far as the construction side of things, what we would be doing is coming from Castle Rock Substation, which is kind of there along the Cowlitz River and A Street, kind of that yellow box there at the lower portion of the map. And we would replace all the poles, wood poles, larger conductor, like Mike said, to carry the capacity of the amps. And we'd go all the way up to Papa Pete's, which is kind of right there at Spirit Lake Highway and I-5, exit 49. And then from that point forward, heading up north of Pacific Highway, we'd do a transmission line, 75, 80-foot poles with a distribution underbuild to the Space Age area. And then that's kind of like Steve said, that's the first build out. And then ultimately what we would do is continue with that transmission line and that underbuild to that aqua teal colored line that's kind of west of I-5 to the Barnes Street substation, Barnes Drive substation, and tie into that. And then furthermore, ultimately we would go where that orange line is across the Cowlitz River back and tie into a transmission line that's on West Side Highway. And then that would be a complete loop there to provide better reliability and service for customers along I-5 and West Side Highway, and then up in that Space Age area. So
Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, in terms of the funding package, the overall cost estimate for the priority phase, which is the focus of this application, would be 4.5 million. Full build out would be 5.3. For the priority phase, we have made a request for funding with Congresswoman Perez and Senators Murray and Cantwell for 2.75 million for fiscal year 2027. This time, the PUD would fund 1.35 million out of its reserves. And again, we're requesting 400,000 for the design engineering component through the Rural Public Facilities application process here. So hypothetically, a project timeline, if we were to receive funding from this program here, we would get started in June for basically budget about a year for the project design. And then assuming other funding is secured from the federal resources, we would, in January 2028, we would go to bid and with a proposed construction start date from May 2028 to May 2029 to have the 4.2 miles completed. And that would allow us to accommodate new development, obviously along the line, along Pacific Highway, but also focused on the Exit 52 area. And we know that there are commercial interests that are looking. There are also from a state policy standpoint in terms of EV fast charging build out to serve I-5 motorists, that would be a prime location as well. And next slide. Again, the overall benefits, this project, it promotes economic development, business expansion, job growth in the North County. It will accommodate new home construction in the north end of the service area, support public EV charging infrastructure and supporting retailers and other services for I-5 motorists. It would improve electric service reliability for existing and future customers, and it lays the foundation for the future North County grid investments and that looped system. We do run into a lot of, throughout the north part of the county, we run into a lot of outages during storms and severe weather events. And with some of the grant requests and projects that we're planning, we're trying to reduce the number of severe outages serving various areas. So it allows us to get the system back online and customers' services restored faster as we can kind of take out chunks of the service disrupting feeders that are out there. So this would be part of that overall strategy. And just probably anticipating some questions, why hasn't this line been funded already? And again, as Mike said, prior to Space Age coming in there, we had just slow growth occurring in the area, and there was enough capacity to kind of serve the growth as we saw it. We always plan for capacity expansions as that organic growth occurs. But given some of the recent development and then what's being proposed, we believe this is a good opportunity for some type of economic development funding boost to help jumpstart that type of project. We would love to fund all these projects through ratepayer funds right now, but we know that would burden the overall customer base for maybe the benefit of few. And so we always have to balance out our capital projects and the capacity expansion throughout the system to keep the customers, our overall customer base in mind as we do make investments in the system. And thank you very much for your time this morning, and happy to answer any questions.
So assuming this is completed by May of 2029, what kind of growth is it going to be able to handle once it's completed?
That is actually a good question. So again, all of it depends where load lands, but I'll try and give it to you in numbers. So Typically a feeder for us, is at about, I'd say about 10 megawatts of capacity. A typical home is going to be about 7 or 8 kW. So the first phase of this, where we're doing a build out and stuff like that, we're not going to get 12 megawatts up there. I mean, I'll tell you that right now. We're out away from the substation, but it will substantially increase the capacity that's there. This is also part of laying the groundwork, though, for that Barnes Drive substation eventually. Whether that gets built in 10 years or 20 years depends on how the load grows. But landing that substation up there, now at that point in time, you're stacking in multiple feeders. So like I said, if you have a feeder can handle, about 10 to 12 megawatts, and we put 4 feeders out of there. Now, in theory, you could push 30, 40 megawatts from that substation to support that area, which is, hopefully in my career, way more than we would ever need out in that area at that point in time. But this is really laying some of that foundational work. But with these feeder upgrades and stuff, we anticipate we should be able to support our usual continual organic growth, but also start to support things like some EV charging facilities at that exit for public access and those types of things as well.
We understand some of the proposals for the area include, new, RV camping facilities, hotels, additional service, vehicle service areas. We could also support light manufacturing with capacity in this line. Just depends on how the land use would work, throughout the area between Castle Rock and Exit 52. So, opportunities are there. And that's why we feel this type of investment coming from economic development funds for public infrastructure, this is the right type of project to fund through that bucket of dollars.
So that all works after May of 29, but between now and then, in my understanding, we shouldn't be issuing building permits because you can only handle 3 or 4, maybe 4 homes between now and May of 29 out there on that feeder.
Yeah.
So part of this comes into, again, what I was talking about earlier about how we model and plan, right? So 3 to 4 homes essentially comes down to is voltage drop, those types of things. So it's as much the quality of service as it is the reliability of service. So, I mean, honestly, today, when everything's switched normal, we could probably handle 50 more homes. But as soon as we have to start offloading, so we have to plan for those storms and stuff like that, things get a little bit trickier. So we start to get concerned about what the voltage levels are. We actually recently installed some voltage regulators up there to help support this. That's a Band-Aid fix, honestly, until we can get the rest of this taken care of. So as an engineer, I guess I can't say yes or no, you should be issuing building permits, but we are concerned about it. And there's a fair amount of load that essentially or I should say fair amount of load. There's load that has showed up that has asked about getting service out there. Not talking residential load, obviously, that we basically have told them, if you want to land, you need to pay for this infrastructure to get built out, to get in the time frame that you want. And they've had to say, we can't do that. So in a nutshell, we've given them the option to say no, but that's what it takes. So it's tight up there. I mean, it really is. So we're concerned about it, and we're moving as quickly as we can from our side of stuff as well.
So between now and then, we need to recommend gas and not electric homes.
I don't know how much gas is available there either.
Yeah, we do believe in diversity and energy diversity. So
Yeah. Is this kind of pretty much in this Barnes exit area? I guess what I'm getting at, if you go to the Huntington exit where Tappanee and stuff, and if they started doing commercial there, does it spread far enough that it handles that type of stuff too?
Huntington, is that where the CT6? Okay. This would help support that, but you're starting to get a little further south. So I would say,
Do you have these kind of issues there? Do you know?
there are limitations there as well. We're fighting this continually, always around the county, whether you're in the Woodland area, the Castle Rock area. I mean, about the only place that, we don't wring our hands too much over capacity is, Longview over by BPA.
Yeah.
But
okay.
most everywhere else, this is one of many cogs in the machine that is constantly moving and turning and stuff like that. So there's inquiries down in that area as well that much of anything. I mean, I don't know if Steve touched on this, but generally speaking, as a public agency and being ratepayer funded and stuff like that, we have a philosophy of growth pays for growth, right? So most of the time, we try to turn around and essentially go, all right, if you need these facilities or the system has to be upgraded for your load, then you need to pay for that. It's not the responsibility of your neighbor to pay for that. But we start to get into circumstances where, again, beyond the engineering side of the world, but you start talking about economic development and funding and how do you attract that and stuff like
Yeah.
that may require a little bit more aggressive approach or some assistance from elsewhere.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Steve, is this the project itself as far as like permitting goes, because we have existing lines there? We're not going to run into any issues with that based on our conversation on Thursday that we had with
Concern right of way at all.
No, typically, most of that line is built along the road, and so we would just get road permits, and we'd get a I-5 crossing permit and probably a DNR permit for the river crossing. But we have those in place because there's an existing underground line across the bridge now. But yeah, I wouldn't see any issues with getting that. Just a matter of going through the processing and getting the permits.
I like that you're looking at this from an economic development perspective. Because per that conversation on Thursday, we're turning away opportunities because we don't have the infrastructure. Obviously, there's also a supply problem there too, but whatever we can do to be proactive with regards to our infrastructure and be inviting to opportunities, I think it's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And also, we wanted to point out, there is an investment. We're not asking for the feds and the county to come in and pay for this entire project. There's an investment that's, part of our overall system costs for the upgrade. This is really a matter of, do we see a need? Do we see an opportunity? And are we able to, piece together a good funding package to make this happen that can maybe help jumpstart some development in the North County, and whether that development is commercial around freeway interchange, but also does this support future residential development, which we know there's a shortage of affordable housing out there. All right. Thank you very much, and have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
So next up, we have the Port of Woodland. And the first few slides may seem the same from last week.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Chris Herman. I'm the Executive Director at the Port of Woodland. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to bring our project before you. We're looking at continued build out of the master plan development at the Roseway Industrial Park. If you recall, in 2024, the initial 2 buildings at the industrial park were christened and are currently full. And in fact, all of the port's as of Friday, buildings are full. We signed a lease for a building on Portway just on Friday. So we're bringing a new diesel mechanic to the county, moving up from their current facility that they've overgrown in Ridgefield. So we are looking at the opportunity to continue to provide small manufacturing space in the South County. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the presentation. Next slide. So again, Roseway Industrial Park, this second phase, so the full build out will ultimately be 6 buildings. These are really designed to be small manufacturing or distribution sites, and 2 of those have been completed. This project that we're looking at here would construct an additional 2 buildings, Building A and D, as well as complete the full site design. So it's a total of 43,000 square feet that would be developed. Our overall request, I really wanted to bring to you the full view of this, and certainly from a small organization. Our request is for really looking at a partnership. So we are requesting $1.2 million over 3 years. So the initial request for 2026 would be $300,000 to help us complete the full site design, and then construction both in 2027 and 2028. We'll get a little bit more into detail on that in the next slide. So again, this is the full site design. This is on the corner of Guild Road and Roseway. If this picture is already old, because if you look to the south, Trammell Crow is constructing the 2 largest buildings that will be within the city of Woodland. One, we do understand the 615,000 square feet has already been taken up. And so it really does show an incredible demand within the South County for development sites for commercial facilities. Unfortunately, as you've discussed a little bit or acknowledged, continued build out of additional acreage south of here will require more work in the way of developing sewer, procuring power. And so this spot is really sort of the next that is set. It's we have power dedicated for this build out, and all permits with the exception of our construction industrial permit are set, and that permit itself will only take a month or 2 to reacquire as we begin constructing. I guess one other thing, as far as we're looking at and having discussions even with our current tenants, a significant demand that we're seeing, and so we're actually reworking some of the site plans here, is for either trucking companies or facilities looking for drive-in or drive-through space. And so we're looking to see how we can modify the current design that we've had for these buildings to allow for that, and allow for those types of uses. Obviously, we have a big trucking demand, and with Taylor Trucking moving to Woodland, we're beginning to see just sort of more and more companies that are looking to find their way to the Woodland area for a number of reasons, but certainly the ability of having a good quality of life and folks wanting to be able to work or start their day and end their day in the community that they live is a big driver for those types of companies. Next slide. So we have done in preparation for this a number of different planning studies. So the first phase of this project received federal funding through the ADA administration, as well as through Washington State's Community Economic Revitalization Board, both of which require planning to demonstrate the demand. And so for each of the 2 sets of buildings, we expect that there'll be 100 or more jobs created. And so that will generate over time $8.9 million in annual payroll. And then we annualize that over the initial 20 years of the development. Next slide. I talked a little bit about the planning, and so we have worked both with the Council of Governments as well as the EDC. Let's go to the next slide and I can talk through the funding plan. So we have requested funding through both the CDF and CDS programs with both our senator and representative Glusenkamp Perez for $4 million for this project. We would put in an application for CURB through their Prospective Development Program for $3 million. We do believe that as we get closer to full build out, we'll actually have a committed partner, which will enable us to increase our request through CURB. And that will make the project be able to fund the project more quickly. Again, through the funding request here and then some of our in-kind. The overall project is $8.8 million. So, and again, the specific request for this year is final site design of $300,000. And then you see both the requests of 2027, 2028 of $300,000 and $600,000. Again, this is really designed to give you the full perspective of the project and what it takes for a small organization to fund a pretty big project like this. We do think the partnership is valuable, but we would recognize if you opt to just fund a portion for the current year, that would certainly be acceptable, and we will be able to use whatever we can get. So, next slide. So just a little bit about the timeline. Again, we're pretty shovel ready, have the engineering reports done, and we have our construction stormwater permit that we would work on in early next year. We would essentially begin construction in July of 2027 and be doing ribbon cutting in mid 2028. Next slide. I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions. Again, thank you for the opportunity. There's a significant demand as we're talking with even our current tenants and looking at 3 and 5 year growth projections that we have some significant opportunities to keep, build, and grow small businesses.
Chris, with regards to the expansion that you guys currently have going on, and you may or may not know this, what's the relationship with the landowners down there with you guys talking about expansion and growth? Is that gotten any better or is it still the same?
I would say, I think very deliberatively, my bosses, our commission, have said, hey, we need a reset. And so they brought me in as part of doing that. So I think stepping back, we're certainly trying to and putting a face forward of being more collaborative with the city, with the county, with all of the local landowners within the Woodland Bottoms and within the city itself. I think we're making small incremental steps, but it'll take time. It'll take so we're working on it, but I think we're also trying to figure out our lane. So we have, I think, a unique opportunity to help with building out utilities and supporting private development. I think, as I said last week, we know we're not a Trammell Crow. We're not capable of being that, but we can certainly participate and help the development that they bring because all of it helps with the local economic development. Good question. Thank you.
Perfect.
I guess real quick, I know that you're new to the position, but I'm just wondering if you have any feel for the growth that you're experiencing right now, what's going on at the port, was any of that in your projections from the port 5 years ago? I mean, you're projecting now 3 to 5 years out, right?
Yeah.
And so 3 to 5 years ago, were they projecting this kind of growth? And did the growth meet the projections from 5 years ago? I mean, everybody has a tendency to do this hockey stick. We're going to grow like crazy. We need this, we need that. Doesn't always turn out that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it exceeds the expectations. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't go both ways. I'm just curious what the financial picture was 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And is the port on track with that today?
With our financial projections or with growth in Woodland?
Growth in the ports area, the stuff that
Yeah.
you're managing, right? How much growth?
Yeah,
have
I
you
mean, I
seen?
think it's certainly we don't have the property. I think that we probably wish we did, given the current circumstance with the amount of growth that's happening in Woodland. So we probably could be positioned a little bit better from that perspective. But again, I think, the port isn't going to be competing with the large private equity investors that are coming in. And so it's really, I think it's a nuanced picture because we're really probably better positioned to support that type of development rather than being the ones that lead it. And so it's really, in my mind, it's about finding what our lane is and where we can provide the best support. And there are, I think, a core number of small businesses that, we are able to help support getting off the ground and helping them grow. And so if that's a place that we're able to add more value, then I think it's maybe not where other ports find themselves as maybe being a leader within their economic development. We're I think standing in strong support of all types of developers. I mean, we've got I call them cowboys as far as some of the small but pretty well capitalized folks that are also developing as well. So and it takes all of them, and we're figuring out how to play in the same sandbox. So
Okay, thank you.
Chris, one question that I have with regards to, you're talking about the expansion and the growth. Can you just touch on the relationship with the port and the city with regards to the exit situation? Because if you guys are talking about expanding and growing and doing what you're doing, that has to be addressed. And I'm just wondering what conversations have gone on, where you guys are with that, because we want to make sure that we're putting good money towards good projects that are going to be successful, long term. And that is an issue to me that if that hasn't been addressed, I'm not sure, it doesn't matter what we do down there, we're going to have problems.
yeah. Well, the city's next, but we have had discussions, and the city is advancing an Exit 21 strategy, and I believe they've now are beginning to take a look at Exit 22 and the need to make some modest investments and improvements there prior to 21 heading into construction. And so I think those are the types of at least near term that to me that makes a lot of sense, because we're definitely going to be driving more vehicle traffic to Exit 21, and in reality in the port's epicenter, it's all flowing to Exit 21 or 22 anyway currently. And so I think if we can hopefully make some modest investments into 22, that will help. But it's a good point as far as making sure that those projects move on time, because we're already very close to, if not over capacity, certainly at peak traffic hours.
Well, I think it's something that the county, the city, and the port are going to have to work in conjunction, because we're addressing Dyke Road and the issues that are on that road. So there's, as we move forward with these projects that you guys have, I think it's gonna be vital that we communicate and work with each other, as we move forward, because like I said, we can do all sorts of stuff in those bottoms, but if that exit situation isn't squared away, I think we're just wasting our time.
No, understood.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to Port of Woodland. Our next applicant will be the City of Woodland. They're making their way up.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Riley Bennell. I'm the City of Woodland Public Works Director. My colleague to my right is Catherine Michaelbush. She's the engineering tech for the City of Woodland. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a presentation on our project, the North Beacon Road Water Main expansion. Next slide. So the City of Woodland is seeking $576,000 for the North Beacon Water Main Expansion Project. This project is just across the Davidson Railroad tracks to the west. Prior in 2021, Rural Economic Funds funded a water line crossing at the Davidson Railroad tracks. To get water, it would be our fourth water crossing to the west side of the BNSF tracks. This expansion would allow for future expansion of industrial commercial space from the Trammell Crow southern boundary line. At this point, we do not have substantial water infrastructure in order to handle a large industrial commercial presence south of Trammell Crow, North Beacon. Next slide. So this project would be installing 1,216 linear feet of 12-inch PVC C900 and 82 linear feet of 16-inch PVC C900 water main. This would connect the existing water infrastructure that we have present at Caples to the north and North Beacon intersection down to the Davidson Railroad tracks. This project really just emphasizes a key point of infrastructure when we talk about the port growth for domestic and fire capacity. Without this key piece of infrastructure, those projects would not be able to move forward necessarily. We have multiple industrial complexes in that area that are actually putting in holding tanks for their fire suppression flow. So with this project, we'd give sufficient fire flow for those commercial industrial buildings. Biggest thing too is with this project, it promotes industrial commercial growth, therefore increasing land value in the bottoms off Caples and future expansion to the south. Next slide. So current status of the project, matching funds for this project has been secured. The city has about $97,000 in design and engineering for this project already complete. This is shovel ready. Engineering and design is to 90%, pending bid docs and bid. Geotechnical pavement report has been completed and we are ready to move forward. Next slide. Project timeline. We are looking at project completion in November of 26, pending funding. If this key piece of infrastructure is not funded through this program, it would fall back on a developer-driven infrastructure project to move forward. The city has spent about $5 million in the last 3 years on other city infrastructure along the lines of well maintenance, city treatment, filter rehab, a brand new reservoir for the added capacity needed to expand the industrial commercial areas on the west side of I-5. This is just not a key piece of infrastructure that we're ready to move forward with at build out at this time. That is it.
Riley, do you have anybody currently that you could talk to about them building it out, coming into that area?
So we've had multiple conversations with developers on the Caples, just south of Trammell Crow, or the expansion of Roseway. It is a fairly substantial project for a developer to take on. It would take a pretty large land developer that's looking to take this kind of infrastructure on. We did in 2021, when funding was received to do the Davidson Avenue crossing, rail crossing. We did have a developer looking at the options at build out on Caples, but this project was a key piece of why they didn't actually move forward. It was just too costly.
Any additional questions?
I'm good.
Pretty
Thank you.
straightforward.
Yeah, we have, and just kind of touch on the question to the port earlier. The city of Woodland and the Port of Woodland and the county are working very well together on addressing the exit 21 and 22 issues. So we appreciate their cooperation and the collective to see that project through as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Riley, and thank you, City of Woodland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is going to be with the Port of Klamath EDC.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Good morning, sorry. Don't want to rush it. Just as a quick correction, this is not in my capacity as a Port of Kalama. This is with the 501c3 nonprofit group Envision Kalama, of which I am the treasurer. So our project is a cooperative with Calais Economic Development Council. They're the applicant in this case, and Ted Sprague couldn't be with us today, but gives his support, and also his board of directors has voted to support the application. So strong support there. As the rest of the project is Envision Kalama, I'm perfectly able to present the project and would have anyways last week. So the decision to work together with Calais Economic Development Council is they have the already established route for rural development block grant funding. And that was a suggestion that we kind of work with them to achieve our goal with this project. Next slide, please. So the Kalama Community Action Plan, Envision Kalama, as I said, is the project manager, and then we would hire a consultant for the actual work. So it's the Calais Economic Development Council would just be in the role of being the fiscal agent for the project. Next slide. A little bit about Envision Kalama. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, as I said. We were established in 2005, and we were established to help build a clear vision of Kalama's future, improvements that could improve the quality of place and quality of life in Kalama. And we work through philanthropy, so we accept donations and we carry out projects to better the community, such as the murals that have gone in downtown. We'll go through some other things here as we move along. Next slide, please. So the Kalama Community Action Plan. Before Envision Kalama was created, there was a 25-year vision document and process set out for Kalama. And it was the early 2000s. And this document included 34 specific projects that the community as a whole bought into as benefiting Kalama. As you see, we've achieved 21 of those 34 projects. And with that, we've done some really fantastic things, you know, bringing the community together on things like the McMenamins Kalama Harbor Lodge, like the downtown streetscape and landscaping, Spencer Creek Station as a development, which is projected to bring 900 employees to the community. Discover Kalama, which is a tourism marketing effort in Kalama. And Envision Kalama was actually a part of one of the tasks on that original plan, the Kalama Community Action Plan. So Envision Kalama was born almost immediately after that original plan and became kind of the shepherd of the plan. Next slide, please. So this project in particular, what we'd like to do is, that plan is now 26 years old. The 25-year timeline on that has eclipsed, and we'd like to develop a new plan. As you've seen, it's been very successful at creating jobs and projects to beautify our community. We have a $55,000 project, and we're making a $40,000 request to the county to support this project. The other $15,000 will come as match from the combination of the city, the port, and Envision Kalama itself. And our goal with this project, one, is to engage a diverse subset of citizens. You know, demographics change over 25 years, and Kalama has as well, with a good level of growth. And we'd like to bring everyone together around a common goal, a common vision for Kalama. And then we'll solicit input from key leaders and thought leaders in the community to have more specific input into the project. And once we have that widespread input, we'd really like to do some branding work for everyone in the community to really come together around how we present Kalama to the rest of the world. And ultimately, we're going to develop a new Kalama Community Action Plan for the next 25 years of development and community improvement in the Kalama community. And when I say Kalama, I mean not just city, but the larger 98625, which ends up being about 8,700 citizens, I believe. Next. Next slide. Oh, that's the last one. I thought I had at least a thank you at the end of it. I guess I left that to the subjective. You know, I just really want to thank you guys for your time. And I know you deal with a lot of good projects, bricks and mortar, and as have I sat before you with those projects before. And what I'll say about this project is it's a very small investment for a massive amount of impact. So while the Kalama Community Action Plan of this project isn't the thing that builds the Kalama Harbor Lodge, it's the thing that sets the stage in the community for the Kalama Harbor Lodge and for these other developments. And it's really that proactive planning that allows us to bring those kinds of projects to fruition with a fair amount of ease in our community, because others have already bought into the plan and support that vision for Kalama. So I appreciate your time and, as always, your consideration.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks, Eric.
Pretty straightforward.
All right. Well, thank you
Thank
guys
you.
very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, and Envision Kalama. Apologize.
Vision Kalama.
So this was the finalization of our first round of applicants. Tomorrow afternoon at 3:00, we will have another 5 applicants that will present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, we can head into, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Head into agenda item review. I see, George, you're first on the list here.
Jessica emailed back, said she does.
She does.
Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. George Moya, Juvenile Court. On tomorrow's agenda, you have 2 motion items. Motion item number 5 and 6, based on the agenda that was distributed. This essentially is regarding our juvenile detention contracts with Pacific County and Wahkiakum County. If you remember, we had an agenda review on April 13th. We discussed these in some length. April 14th, as a motion item, it was set over to June 2nd. I can give the board an update on this, that since the April 14th meeting, I've had conversations, worked with our risk pool, reached out to legal as well. And I'm not sure if you received my email that I forwarded from risk management with their recommendation to essentially terminate contracts with other counties. The exposure to liability and litigation was just too great of a risk. In speaking with legal, based on that recommendation, they agreed that the risk would be too high to even entertain any sort of language that would be in these contracts.
Well, George, I look at this a couple of different ways. First and foremost, the role that we play in subsidizing other counties and not forcing the counties to come together and go to the state and say, hey, something's got to change. If we've got 4 or 5 counties that we're subsidizing, there's no urgency or pressure for them to do anything with regards to getting the state to change anything. And so that's one for me. The other is the liability situation it's a real issue. And right now, under the current circumstances with no statute of limitations, who knows how long that this could go on and how long we would be exposing ourselves to a liability for an amount of money that we're subsidizing in the first place. So I think it's I understand we've had a long-standing relationship with those counties, and I would rather do something sooner than later to give them the opportunity and the time to find something else. But I think that it's a move in the right direction.
When do these expire, George?
They're technically expired, but we do have that bridge until the board makes a decision. So normally we continue with business under the old contract. So I'm
So you actually
calculating,
need a formal decision
correct.
tomorrow, and just the fact they're expired and we're not
Correct.
renewing them.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Once the decision has been made, then we will proceed to communicate with both counties
Okay,
and send a letter. And based on the contract, I'll cite the verbiage on section M of, at least for Wahkiakum County, that states 60 days. So that's a 60-day notice.
Okay.
The one direction I'll need from the board is the 60 days, whether it be including all days, or are we talking 60 days of business days? Because that will have a hard deadline for the county. And I think I'll need some direction on that tomorrow.
The contract doesn't stipulate if it's calendar days or.
It does not. I was looking at it, it just says effective no less than 60 days after receipt of written notice.
Okay.
You know, I'm calculating 60 days, including all days, would be Saturday, July 4th. Or 60 days excluding weekends and holidays would be July 31st. 2 separate dates. I'd like to let the board know that Mr. Scott Jaco from Wahkiakum County is also here from Wahkiakum County. If you would entertain some communication from him to the board, I'm sure he would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Scott, you can.
Hello and good morning to the board. It sounds like you're already leaning towards a decision, but I'll make my pitch anyway. We did receive and review the email from the Cowlitz County Risk and Safety Manager. Our Wahkiakum attorney indicated to me that we could cover the $100,000 deductible for any lawsuit filed pertaining to a Wahkiakum juvenile detainee. It would also make sense if Cowlitz were to pass on some of the costs of your SAM insurance to Wahkiakum County. So if those two things were added into a contract amendment, that would be fine. And then also, if the proposed cost of $250 per day is not sufficient to cover the actual or the real cost, I would ask if Cowlitz County could determine a cost per day amount within the contract amendment that I could then take back to the Wahkiakum board for their consideration. So that's my pitch in an attempt to save the contract without Cowlitz being burdened with any costs for our kids.
I appreciate the dilemma that both sides of this find themselves in, and the risk in this day and age, the way the risk hangs over everybody's head is not exactly a problem of our own making. It's just kind of got dropped on everybody. Thank you to the state legislature. I don't know that I know an easy answer to this.
So you said you would be willing to have in the contract written that you would cover our SIR should something happen?
Yes, from the Wahkiakum attorneys that we could cover, I don't know what the amount would be for your guys' SAM insurance. I suppose George and I could work that out, but yes, we felt it was fair that we would cover some of that cost, sure.
Shelley, do you know what that number is?
I do not.
100,000? Mm-hmm.
Shelley Pierce, Risk Manager. I empathize with your county, obviously. In speaking to the risk pool last week, we're over 200 SAM claims. And as we've seen, some of them, these claims come up 20, 30 years later. And what the financial impact is today, who knows what that will be in 20, 30 years. So although our SIR is that 100,000, that won't even come close to a potential SAM claim. And also going back in records, just all the research and data that it all entails with attorneys and attorney fees. It's just a risk right now that the county can't feasibly cover. And so that's my concern, is that what costs are today, we don't know what those cost impacts will be on the county, which impacts our citizens, all things involved, 5, 10, 20 years from now. It was highly recommended from the risk pool that we dissolve the contract just due to the potential fiscal impact that it could have on our county. So that's my input. Unfortunately, I think a lot of counties are dissolving relationships like this because of that financial impact. So I just wanted to add that in there. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioners?
Well,
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works.
So good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. We have a fairly straightforward item on the consent agenda this week. We have the execution for the 2026 Countywide Pavement Overlay Project. This project was awarded on April 21st for just over $2.7 million. We received 3 bidders and we awarded it to Lakeside for this amount.
The fact that we got 3 bidders and Lakeside's the only one in the area. I mean, they're the closest sense.
Yes.
People outside the area looking for work, huh?
We usually get 2. We usually get Lakeside and Granite. But this year, I can't remember who the third was this year off the top of my
Who
head.
was the second one? Lakeside and who?
Granite is generally the second bidder. Every once in a while, they'll sneak up and they'll beat Lakeside out. So it'll be interesting to see if, when they get their new plant established in Woodland, how close that competition becomes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Event Center, Kim.
Good morning. Good morning. Now the microphone's on. Kim Bocut, Cowlitz County Event Center. I've got two items on the consent calendar for tomorrow. The first one is an agreement with Longview Rotary. This is a large grant that was approved by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. And this is the first, I believe, of two that will come before you. The Longview Noon Rotary is going to be renovating Martin's Dock over at Lake Sacagawea, and the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee voted to grant them up to $60,000 in a reimbursement grant to help fund that. Is there any questions before I move on? And the second item that I have on the agenda is also a continuation from last week. It's a personal services agreement between the Cowlitz County Event Center and Watson Creative. This is to help us develop our we'll do some research analysis, brand development, and help prepare a comprehensive marketing analysis for the event center. This is up to $50,000 and will be reimbursed by the Public Facilities District.
Kim, do you know what they're planning on doing at Martin's Dock?
It is like an amphitheater so it currently kind of has a natural slope up, and they're going to be putting, it looks like maybe a shell behind it and some step seating. And
The long range plan is an amphitheater. They'll tier some of that and build a stage. I think they're doing some upgrades to Martin's Dock itself too.
correct. I have their grant application in front of me. Let's see if I brought that part of it. I know I brought the photos. The larger project is to rebuild the failing Martin's Dock and add an amphitheater. The funding that they're requesting is for the architectural, environmental, and permitting costs. And then I do know that they have multiple grants that they applied for. The total project budget was $300,000. Any questions on those?
Okay,
All right.
thanks. Kim.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, who's going to talk about this next one?
Yeah, Bailey Silva on behalf of IT. I'm just here to talk about item number 4, which is just rescinding the 2006 cell phone policy and updating it. It was just a very outdated policy that didn't support current processes, so I worked with legal and we just revamped it, and it added a more comprehensive list of like acceptable uses and misuse of a cell phone.
So we brought the policy up to current practice.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a lot of language in there that just doesn't apply to cell phones in today's world.
Like no using it as a clay pigeon?
Yeah, or reimbursement for phone minutes or text messaging minutes. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for agenda. Jessica, you got a couple things?
Good morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I do have one request from Corrections, Offender Services, looking to fill their programs officer position. The employee just left last week or the week before last. Marin's here with more information on that as well.
This is a position that oversees our electronic home monitoring, out of custody work crew and community service programs. I'd like to move our part-time person to full-time, sorry, and take a reduction in our extra help to assist with the budget.
So to fill this, you're going to take it part-time and move them to full-time and not replace the part-time?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Is that a yes? Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the only request I had this morning.
Okay. I know we had a request here. I don't know that we actually on the employee party.
And the recognition thing, yeah.
That's an expense item, and I think we can just do right here. We're just talking about if we should continue that or we should delay it this year due to budget. I would kind of vote to delay it or eliminate it this year.
The barbecue and the,
Yeah.
yeah, I think delay it.
What about the Excellence in Service Awards that we've
Right.
already got? That's for department heads and other electeds. Bailey was telling me that we have that budgeted already. And she was wanting to know if I guess they were supposed to be awarded quarterly when we took that over from the auditor. Do you know anything about that,
Right.
Kelly?
The excellence in service is just yearly. So it's an annual award.
And is that for the
It's the one we
directors?
do here.
Yeah, and that one is buying plaques for the,
Is your mic on?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
that one is for buying,
Okay.
is it working? That one's for buying plaques.
So which one is it where she went through and bought like AirPods and different things that they can choose from if they get, that's the one I'm talking about.
That's the longevity. So however many years, so if they're like over 5 years, 10 years, I believe. So if there's increments in each year, it gets a little bit higher.
I think she already bought those this year.
Yeah, that's why I was asking because
Okay.
she wanted to know if we're gonna be giving those out. Because they're already purchased.
Well,
Is it already purchased?
if they're already
We
purchased.
should, yeah,
Yeah.
so we need to talk about it.
Yeah, I would think it would be for 2027. I think we're all right for 2026.
I don't know what Bailey's purchased or not purchased, so I can't speak to that, but those prizes, they're like the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year increments. That employee gets a longevity prize, and then along with that, they get like a rodeo ticket type thing. So I think that's what she's referencing.
John, it sounds like we're already purchased for 26, so maybe as you're doing budget, we can just highlight those numbers for us before we approve 27.
Okay, so the awards that you're referring to are the Outstanding Professional Award, which is independent from the Excellence in Service.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've already bought those.
No, they're budgeted. It's part of that employee recognition budget that we have in our office.
So this is just completely separate award from what we've just talked about then.
I didn't listen to everything. I came out here as soon as I heard you guys talking about excellence, but I just wanted to clarify that they are separate.
And those are for directors. And other electeds?
Yes, the excellence is excluding directors, department heads and electeds, and then the outstanding professional like includes those positions.
How much is budgeted? You know,
There's, I believe, 19,000 in employee recognition, and then there's like 1,000 in retirement, which we pull the retirement plaques out of the retirement. And then the excellence in service and longevity items get pulled out of the employee recognition fund. I would say the bulk of that fund is used for the longevity.
And what awards do you give for the professional awards? The same ones out of the longevity cabinet?
I do not know if that portion of the policy has been used in the past.
Yeah, to my knowledge, that award hasn't been given out since I've been here at
Yeah.
least, so 8-ish years.
So we're talking about a budget item of $19,000.
Yeah, and 10,000 of that is actually the barbecue, the employee barbecue. Which I believe was done differently in the past, so I don't know if
and that money comes out of what fund?
employee recognition out of our office.
Yeah.
And it's already budgeted for 26. We've already got the money.
Yes.
So we're talking about 27.
And that'll be something we'll highlight during our budget workshops for 2027, highlight those roles and those budget lines so the board can make an informed decision at that time.
Yeah.
And of course, if you choose not to run the barbecue this year, we can take advantage of those budget savings for this year as well.
Okay.
I've already signed the barbecue contract for this year, so if you guys want us to cancel that, just let me know.
Did you sign it with one of our own departments?
Yeah, under the board's office. But you can cancel it at any time. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's in 26, but I think it's appropriate to look at 27 as you're working through that, Sean, if you want my opinion.
Yeah, we'll definitely highlight that for 27. Thank you.
Thank you. Had one thing for you. I tried to see if I didn't see you guys on here on the forest practices board on that land setback. Clallam County, there's an attorney up there, the Port Angeles attorney, Carolyn Lake, is handling the brief, the amicus brief for the Port Angeles and Clallam County, and willing to do so for others wishing to join in the brief against that. I know Pacific County will join. I'm pretty sure Lewis. There's an expected cost of between $15,000 and $20,000. And if others, right now they have 2 people, if others join, that number will be prorated over the participants equally. I believe we have it into May to file, so time is important. So my question is if we want to be part of that. We've kind of indicated we have, but I don't want to make a.
I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you tell me if your county would like to be included, you need to contact Carolyn. So I'll send contact to Carolyn and tell them that Calais County would join that.
in.
Okay. Okay, we have workshop coming at 11. I don't think we have anything till then. Any last thoughts? Okay, we'll recess till 11. Okay. We'll come out of recess and fire up again. I got a little thing. This is a 11 a.m. a joint workshop with Planning Commission on an update to the county critical areas ordinance. Presenting today would be Adam Trimble, our planning manager, and Kyle Cotchett, planning with Facet Inc. Our consultant was did the county's 2016 critical areas ordinance and recently completed Lewis County's update. We have 30 minutes for the presentation, discussion, questions, and comments as time allows. Full materials are online for review and some copies are available as well. There will be additional Q&A with the Planning Commission across the hall following this workshop. So you're going across after the workshop. Planning Commission Chair Mark Smith, Co-Chair Erica Rodman, additional staff, Sahara Cooey, Senior Planning, Cody Kritzker. You guys got to get easier names. Okay, with that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Chair Dahl. We are, as you mentioned, here to present on this draft update. And we've got a presentation to give, so I think we'll start there. I would say feel free to stop us and ask questions as we go, or we'll make sure to ask for those questions as soon as we get through this. All right. Take us away, Kyle.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Kyle Cotchett. Hope you guys are all doing well. I'm the environmental consultant from Facet, working with the county on the critical area ordinance update. And I'll be presenting our work with the county staff on update of the ordinance. So today's presentation will briefly cover an overview of the project timeline, a summary of the work on the draft critical area ordinance, and walk through a few key points. At the end of our presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. So our anticipated timeline culminates in adoption by the Board of County Commissioners in July. So far, Facet has been working closely with the county and has prepared a draft best available science report, a draft gap analysis, a draft CAO. Adam Trimble, the planning manager, has also introduced the project to the Planning Commission. Looking ahead, we plan to initiate the Commerce 60-day notice and the SEPA notice in May, followed by a Planning Commission public hearing in June. And these steps will keep us on track for adoption in July. So why are we updating the CAO? Under the state law, local jurisdictions, including partially planning counties, are required to periodically review and update their critical areas policies and regulations on a 10-year cycle. Cowlitz County last completed this update in December 2016. As part of that process, the county must incorporate best available science to ensure these regulations continue to protect critical area functions and values. The state also requires adherence to the no net loss standard, meaning development cannot result in a reduction of those functions or values. To support this effort, Facet has prepared both a best available science report and a gap analysis to help inform the update. The county's deadline to complete this work is December 31st, 2026. So the key points we'd like to cover.
Are you okay with questions along the way?
I'd like to keep them to the end,
Okay.
if that works best. So key points we'd like to cover today are updates to the wetlands regulations, updates to the riparian habitat area widths, update to reasonable use exception provisions, and the inclusion of public agency and utility exemptions. So in October of 2022, the Washington Department of Ecology updated its 2016 wetland guidance for CAO updates, applicable to both Western and Eastern Washington. This guidance is intended to help jurisdictions implement the Growth Management Act requirements related to the designation and protection of wetland critical areas. The updated guidance outlines 3 different frameworks for administering wetland buffers. At the direction of county staff, the draft CAO incorporates the Option 2 framework, which bases buffer widths on wetland category and the level of impact from adjacent uses, whether existing or proposed. We've also made additional updates to align with agency guidance, including provisions for functionally disconnected buffers, an assumption of well-established native vegetative buffer, and clarification of mitigation plan requirements. So in 2020, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife updated its 1997 guidance on riparian ecosystem management. This guidance is intended to support the protection and restoration of riparian areas to maintain water quality, watershed function, and wildlife habitat. A key update in this guidance is the introduction of riparian management zones based on site potential tree height, or SPTH. This approach considers the full ecological function of riparian systems, including bank stability, shading, pollutant removal, and the recruitment of large woody material. SPTH is based on the expected average of maximum height of the dominant tree species at 200 years. Using WDFW's mapping tool, Facet staff found that much of the county stream network falls within the 230 to 256 foot riparian management zone width range. Our analysis removed data from commercial forestry lands. Currently, the county's buffers range from 50 feet to 150 feet. Based on best available science, we recommend updating these to 180 feet for type F streams and 100 feet for type NP and NS streams. The 180-foot recommendation is informed both by the SPTH mapping results and the FEMAT curve, which shows diminishing ecological returns beyond roughly 75% of one site potential tree height. Using this approach, we applied the 75% to the midpoint of the predominant RMZ range to derive the 180-foot buffer. The 100-foot minimum is based on WDFW guidance for water quality protection, which indicates that a 100-foot buffer can achieve approximately 95% pollutant removal and about 85% surface nitrogen reduction. Neighboring jurisdictions such as Lewis and Clark County have gone through their periodic update and adopted updated stream regulations utilizing WDFW's updated guidance. Lewis County recently updated its regulations using similar WDFW guidance, though it did not fully apply the recommended 100-foot minimum for water quality protection, which is a deviation from best available science. The county currently does have reasonable use exception provisions in their code. The reasonable use exceptions are mechanisms that allow local jurisdictions to provide relief from code requirements when strict compliance would leave a property with no reasonable use. So we are proposing updates to improve alignment with the no net loss standard, as well as to provide greater clarity and consistency in administration. Under the draft CAO, we propose an administrative approval pathway focused on prescriptive allowances for residential development. This approach, based on frameworks used in other jurisdictions, applies a sliding scale tied to lot size, with development generally limited to no more than 4,000 square feet and required to be located in the least impactful area of the site. The second pathway addresses situations where the administrative allowances are still not sufficient to allow reasonable use. In those cases, an applicant may request a determination of reasonable use specific to the site, which would be reviewed through a quasi-judicial process. And the public agency and utility exception is similar to in concept to variance or reasonable use procedures in that it balances critical area protection with the need to accommodate essential public services. Under this approach, a public agency or utility must demonstrate that no practicable alternative exists that would result in fewer impacts to critical areas, and that the project has been designed to avoid, minimize, and fully mitigate those impacts. The Washington Department of Commerce Critical Areas Handbook and Ecology Guidance both provide sample language. which has largely been carried forward in the draft CAO. We do have some time for questions and answers now.
You stated in here that Lewis County is shorter by 25 feet.
For the type N and type S streams.
And what was their best available science to allow them to do that, or their judgment?
They did not provide an argument, to my knowledge, to deviate from BAS. That was adopted by their Board of County Commissioners to go lower than 100 feet for those type N and NP and NS streams.
And has their critical areas ordinance been adopted by the state at this time?
It was adopted locally, I believe in December of 2025.
I guess my question is more back to buffer zones themselves. Early in my training and planning, there was no scientific proof that buffer zones actually accomplish the goals. What have you found, and where can we see that proof?
That's a good question. Yeah, we're mostly working from the ecology guidance that's, promoting.
Guidance.
Mhm. Yeah, so they're providing us with synthesis of the science, so that's.
Oh, Realtors Association. I was at a meeting where the key players were talking about buffer areas. The statement was made, how did you come up with these? The answer was, are you ready for this? It made the most sense at the time. And I don't see that as scientific. Okay.
I have to say, I agree with your statement. It's funny that I appreciate all the work that's been put into this. So I just want to preface that. But when we get terms thrown at us like best available science, that's so that if you go against it, you're not choosing the best option, which to me is a load of malarkey. Because there's so many instances where best available science is not best. Science goes to the highest bidder and he who has the loudest voice. And that has been proven multiple times just recently. I mean, you can look at the Fish and Game, the board of our fish and game department, and it's proof that best available science is not in the decision-making process whatsoever. I do want to say that I am very grateful for the work that has been put into Cowlitz County's plan with regards to helping us mitigate a lot of the stuff that is in a lot of these plans because I do have issues with a lot of this, but I'm grateful that Adam has put the work that he has put into it and getting it to the point that we give our citizens options. And not just have things shoved down our throat, for lack of a better term.
I'm just working off your red line here, Adam.
Yeah.
And all of us could probably harp on best available science. I saw it in action on the Forest Practices Board with the buffers.
Right. Yeah. We've been following that.
They had science, and Wasack met with ecology, head of the ecology 6 killer, and he basically told them, this is pretty close to a quote. I don't care what that says. I'm going with what the environmental groups are telling me. So they don't really care about. Is there any definition of best available science? Can a county define it for themselves? Do we have that ability, or do we have the backbone to maybe put it in there and let them scream?
We've investigated that same question, certainly. If a county or counties got together with the financial backing to investigate and author or make the case for alternate science and then use that as the basis to adopt, an alternate buffer width, for example. That might be a pathway. This project doesn't contain that budget. We're not going out and doing a scientific investigation or authoring new science or paying other scientists to do research for us and make that case.
But can we even just define what we consider best available science? Like it has to be done by somebody with knowledge. It has to be peer reviewed or something like that. Do we have any of those abilities to make it actually a little more believable?
The state law does have a definition for what they consider best available science. Fortunately, I do not have that in front of me, but
Page 4 of the red lines does have that definition, and it's not changing as part of this update. It's the definition in our current code. So I think that is an interesting aspect of this, is that the law of the state is these regulations are based on the best available science, and then that science turns out to be a moving target. And so here we are 10 years later adopting an update based on the science that has occurred between 16 and 26. Like I mentioned, a county or counties could get together and make that effort. That would be a lift. There'd probably be some financial contributions required to justify that. But when I approached this update, I approached it knowing that the laws of the state require this, and they also allow a whole toolbox of tools for property owners to mitigate the regulations, to engage with the options like buffer averaging, reduce it here, increase it over there, mitigation, impact it here, compensate for that there. Reasonable use. You'll see lots of changes to our reasonable use section, which I think is going to come into play more often. People are going to come to us and say, look, we understand this is the regulation, this is the buffer. We reasonably can't develop our site. And they'll make that case. A lot of the times it'll be an administrative review kept at the staff level. So that's another tool. We've also worked with Facet to incorporate a number of new tools, such as voluntary stewardship, people who are engaged in agricultural activities. They actually don't fall under critical areas as strictly, and they can go through the conservation district to basically do their agricultural activity and do the least impact to the critical areas on their site. So if you're doing Christmas tree farming, raising animals, you have a case to make that some of your property isn't subject to these rules. Same thing with properties along our major rivers, shorelines of the state. They're going to continue to operate under the 2016 code. They're not going to be subject to this update until 2031 when that ordinance is updated. So we've done a number of things to carve out, exempt, and or provide a whole suite of tools and allowances for developers to kind of be able to develop in the way that they have been in this county historically.
You talk about agricultural activities. What are those defined as, and how easy is it for a property owner to put themselves in agriculture? Can we just define the county as agriculture until taken out?
Do you know more about VSP, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'd be glad to let you talk more about VSP, but it's has to be an existing use in order to qualify.
Yeah.
And then I believe also it has to be designated as agricultural land too. Is that correct?
I don't think so here.
Okay.
We do have several areas that are ag lands, but we recognize that ag lands occur, agricultural uses, including tree farming, occur all over the county. So, yeah.
Can we just say Cowles County, in the county, it's all agriculture?
I mean, I don't think we want to do that. I mean, we have a lot of heavy industry, we have dense neighborhoods, but you know, I think working within that framework of what is voluntary stewardship, you know, there's room, because I think people, they plan out their dream home over a year or more, right? They're searching for the property, they're preparing, and so that might be an opportunity for them to establish that Christmas tree farm, that agricultural use, in anticipation of, you know, the site plan that they have in mind. And if they have enough property, they're going to avoid these areas anyways, right? So avoidance is the first option, and then you don't have to engage with this code.
So
Let's just think of 180 feet with 1,000 feet of river frontage. That's 4.13 acres. That a property owner has lost the use of.
Yeah, I know how
Yeah.
it's a taking, and that's, even if they don't plan to use it, they should have a right to do.
they should be compensated nicely for it if they can't use it. I want to go back to this best available science. To me, science is somebody puts forth a theory. I don't care if you're Einstein or if you're the neighbor next door, but you put it out and other people around the world come shooting at it to see if they can disprove it. And if your science is solid, it can't be disproven because you've got the background, you've done the tests, you've done the things to prove that your theory is fact, not fiction. So on this best available science, just the term strikes me as somebody sat down and said, this sounds like a great plan. We'll evaluate it 10 years from now and see if we're right. Right at the minute, I guess I would ask, where's the proof that this is going to work the way that somebody says it's going to work? Where is the background that says this is a proven science? Because I can sit down and I can draw all kinds of damn theories about doing this and doing that and say, hey, this is best available science because you haven't done it. I did. So in the meantime, I can't imagine somewhere somebody's got to have some background in this. If they can't prove it, it's not science, it's somebody's theory.
Kyle, you probably know quite a bit about the development of the BAS and the agency rulemaking that goes into it. You know, the shortest answer is that the legislature chose this as the standard for developing these laws, and then they require every jurisdiction to do it. But we did produce the best available science report, you know, which references those studies that the agencies are the ones following and then adopting and using rulemaking to incorporate as the best available science for this state. And the legislature backed them up by making that the standard for all jurisdictions to follow when developing these rules. But yeah, we do have that BAS report. We can also bring in Fish and Wildlife. You know, you saw Dave Howe in here, I think 2 weeks ago. You know, he can speak to this. We've engaged with their staff. So, you know, they understand that the dialogue is this. They work for that agency. It's a large organization. But yeah, it does basically come from that choice by the legislature to adopt that as the standard.
I wouldn't expect Fish and Wildlife or any other agency to come in here and say anything other than best available science. They're going to point to the same thing.
Yeah.
The language passed by the legislature is best available science.
Just to give you a brief history from the 2016 time, we faced the same questions that you're all raising. I think that the staff's done a good job in keeping what we tried to do in that framework in 2016, and that was to get options. Because to every best available science, as you know, everything changes and you have an option. And unfortunately, the property in Cowlitz County is shrinking, developable property. We're going to be facing more of this because we're moving into critical areas and people want to develop those. So it's going to affect our lot sizes a little bit. That's one area that we can do that. While we're reviewing the comp plan too, at the same time we're bringing it up. Areas of opportunity can be identified in that, like we did with the comp plan before, and you can help property owners and developers get through this best available science to Cowlitz County. The farming is an interesting one where you can break out 1 acre out of a 5 acre parcel and have forest lands. There's a lot of different type things that you can, come up with to try to assist people to utilize property. But the big thing to recognize is that we're going to see more problems with land because there's less desirable land available. And that's one of the things we're running into. But just the choices are like with using the tree heights. Trees grow. So, I mean, you base it today, it changes tomorrow. So you're not going to have to back up everything after the tree grows from 50-foot height up to 60-foot height or elevation. There's a lot of options in here that unfortunately property owners and our staff will have to learn more of to how to assist people to be able to, to utilize their property. But it's not based on the county level. It's based from, unfortunately, the state.
Yeah.
So, but one suggestion we did in 2016 in my notes that I saw that never came about was we have an association called the Association, Counties in Olympia. And if the counties utilize them harder, that would be the best group for us to be able to lean on to try and get some of these things better defined for our rural communities, of which there's 36 counties that are more rural area that would be a benefit, because then you're united. So if they came up with, like Adam was pointing out, the best available science, that might be something to lobby them for, is to come up with some direction.
Well, I wish they were stronger, Mark. I sit on that and I ask them why they aren't fighting this forest practices board. And they say, well, it's because some of our counties want it. So they're not going to go to bat for you much as that pains me to say. You would wish that they would. So when I look at these things, and I get what you're saying, but it just, so we try to build something so we know how to help somebody, and it's their damn property. Well, why does it just grates me that they have to have their fingers in everything, and our job is to try and find ways to work through our own policy we can help. And that's fine as long as we have the right leadership sitting down there. When you get the other, then they use all this stuff to, anyway, I'll get off the soapbox, but I find it very frustrating that property owner never really has their property. They're always subject to something. I keep looking through your red lines, and on page 25, I see there's a maps depicting delineated and mapped critical areas and require buffers on site, including buffers for off-site critical areas that extend onto the project site. Private property cannot be accessed without permission. Therefore, assessment of off-site critical areas will either be conducted with neighboring property owner permission or estimated by a qualified professional. These are one of these things that I think is fine as long as I know you're sitting down there. I know Tracy's sitting down there. But it also looks to me like if I'm driving by and I see something's not right, then do I turn into a police action? Where does that stop, and how do we control that? I'm sensitive to these kind of things, that we open this door and then somebody uses it in the wrong way, and somebody that's not doing anything all of a sudden gets this note from us that, hey, so how do we protect them from that?
Well, I appreciate you bringing attention to that, and that, let me know if I'm wrong, Kyle, but this is optional. This is kind of us doing a best practices thing with our update in terms of what to turn in so that we can properly evaluate your project. I don't know that we have to do that.
And I think it's fine. If they've come down for a permit, then I would assume you'd have permission to be on their land and do that.
Yeah.
The part where we don't have permission, so we're going to get aerial views, or we're going to talk to the neighbor what you're doing.
I could speak.
To me, I'm starting kind of move into police action, and I'm going,
Just, the way I've seen this used in practice is, there's a wetland mapping that's showing a potential wetland offsite that could be encumbering a property. But, a qualified professional is not allowed to go out onto the neighboring property because the property owner doesn't want them delineating the wetland on their site. The way it then just gets used is trying to visually assess where that delineation would be to distinguish or to delineate where the buffer would lie on the subject property in for permit.
Yeah, I would be inclined to remove this proposed addition personally. I appreciate you bringing attention to it,
I
frankly.
would be inclined the same direction.
I don't know that it has to be in there. I think it just helps us spell out for some of our consultants what they can and can't or should be doing. The reality is these are professionals who do this for a living, and it feels like a little too much information for me. I'd probably just leave that one out. Thank you for that.
Creeks and tributaries, this could be fairly major change if we would go to 180.
Yeah, and I tried to emphasize it, but a lot of our major rivers are shorelines of the state, and they'll continue to function under the 2016 code. So those buffers will not increase for riverfront properties where it's a shoreline. I was specifically talking about shorelines of the state. So of those major rivers that you mentioned, those properties are going to continue to function under the 2016. But yeah, streams. Mhm. Yeah, depending on steam, some may still be shorelines of the state. But yeah, you're right. You're correct. That's exactly right. Streams and then the seasonal streams, right? They're also seeing an increase. I would note in terms of laying out a site and developing it, as I understand it, there's a water quality requirement for septic systems that's already 100 feet. So at least citing that system, they're already observing a 100-foot buffer, so it won't be a change for those pieces of the puzzle when you're laying out your site. And then I've worked really hard with our consultants to preserve the 100-foot as an option for septic siting, kind of no matter what, that type of infrastructure is kind of a one-time impact. It just really has to go where it goes, right? And if it can't, they're going to find themselves in a reasonable use situation saying, we understand it's not supposed to go here, but reasonably, what you're requiring of us is a very expensive alternative and a bunch of pumps and lifts. And so now we're back into, can we make it work with 100 feet? So that's been a centerpiece of my comments to Facet, as Kyle can attest. I keep talking about septic systems. So thank you for bringing that up.
Adam, my question for you might make you a little uncomfortable, but you just said that you're okay with taking what the chairman just brought up out of there. At what point would you say, I'm good with just leaving this all at 2016?
Yeah, and that just comes back to the state's requirements. That crucible is, if your comprehensive plan and critical areas ordinance are not updated on cycle, then they will not pass through state monies to your county. So that's roads, major projects, revenues. It's like a go, no go. Are you current or are you not? So that's kind of how this all works. And I don't think our 2016 ordinance would pass muster. We identified some provisions that had carried forward from prior to 2016, and they're still in our code today. So there were some areas where our code today wasn't current when it was adopted in 16. So our residents have benefited from that, so to speak. And this is just another example of that, where the Shoreline Management Act update isn't due until 2031. And that's when that particular critical areas code will get updated for those properties. So just staying on cycle, that's what's required. I think that they submitted a compliant draft, went through the peer review, and then when it came up for local adoption, they found reason to adopt a slightly different number. And so that's how it sits on the books for them locally. They've not been challenged, is maybe a more accurate way to put it, but yeah.
Because it's so new, they just recently adopted it.
Yeah, January, I think, December.
And I'm on page 43, 44. We have a list of classifications and descriptions of fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas. My question on that, any of the changes in here, does it create any roadblocks to further work on the Toutle and Cowlitz that aren't already there? I'm kind of sensitive to Mount St. Helens issues and Spirit Lake, and does this create any more steps that have to run through to get approval to do anything on those entities?
Yeah, and I've been talking with Kyle and our team at Facet about our local emphasis on those rivers, right? And I think my answer is they are shorelines of the state, so they'll continue to be subject to the 2016 code, so the buffers won't increase. And if the county were the applicant, the county was pushing a project, there's just other agencies, right? It's the Army Corps,
Yeah.
probably Fish and Wildlife.
There's all
DNR.
kind of letter agencies on that thing.
Yeah, so I don't know that our local critical areas code would really be the factor that mattered the most in those projects. It'd be DNR and Fish and Wildlife permissions, I think.
So what I'm hearing is you're telling me we're not adding anything to the stack of paper.
That's my take, is no, the 2016 code will continue to govern, and really any of those projects are going to be permitted by the state agencies or the federal government.
Just for my own knowledge, I see a lot of reference to wetlands rating of this or that. How did they come up with the wetlands rating?
Those are guidance documents put out by Ecology, and then also working off of the Army Corps delineation assessment paperwork they have to go through.
So is it like it stays moist 9 out of 12 months, or?
Correct. It's all like based
Right.
off soils and vegetation present.
Seems like there's significant change recommendation.
Yeah, if you're looking at some pages, you'll see lots of red lines, and that's mostly because we're reorganizing, moving one section to another.
But also 150 versus 0 in one case, and you see another 40 feet and 75, so it seems like it's substantial.
Did you want to point us to a code or a page number, or? Yeah. Might be wetlands.
Do you, when I look at these things, I'm always trying to ascertain, this is what we can do now. And when we pass this, okay, these things are going to be scratched off the list. You're not going to be able to do this, or this. Do we know any of those answers?
I tried to put a few of those in our presentation for you, and believe me, our staff team here has been doing that the entire way through. What exactly is the change here? So like Hal pointed out, some of the wetland width standards are changing, and it gets real technical really fast. when we did that kind of comparison, there were a few changes, but where it changes is in these scenarios where you're like developing and impacting a wetland. So when you've made the choice that you have to impact, it's some of those ratios change for the compensation, the mitigation for your impact, or sometimes the buffer away from the category of wetland. So, yeah, there are little changes, but the choice that we made with the wetlands in particular, I think left the most options open for the biologist who's helping the developer through that project. I think we left all the pathways available. Facet actually didn't recommend us to keep as many options available, but they are in this draft. And I can go through those with you in detail if you'd like to kind of see that path.
Sure. My goal on these things is always no net loss for a homeowner and their rights. And what I'm hearing here is that's pretty much true, except where we get into wetlands. Then there's going to be some additional buffer or some additional expense they may have to do.
Yeah, the scenario where you've chosen to develop your property and you are choosing to do the impact, you're going to be engaged with a critical areas consultant, a biologist, or somebody. I'd say a lot of the times people end up hiring those consultants regardless if they have these features on their property. And a lot of our properties in the county have these features. So in terms of making people hire experts, it's not going to increase that number because there's so many properties that have these features on them, these critical areas, and people are already hiring the experts. There'll be a little more work for those experts to do to take advantage of the tools that are in this update.
I know we have some builders, contractors in the audience. What do you think of some of this? It is a workshop, but we'll have to bring you to a mic, Travis.
One thing that I always love hearing flexibility. We've got flexibility built in. I deal with all the time. I do probably at least 200-300 permits through Cowlitz County a year. The one thing that I can say that consistently happens with site plans and layouts with homeowners that I do, 9 times out of 10, we end up shifting building sites. We end up having homeowners change their plans, their dreams on their property to avoid the added cost and burden of dealing with the critical areas. So while we have flexibility, the reality is flexibility really only comes into play for homeowners with deep pockets. Otherwise, we either end up abandoning the property altogether. I mean, how many people when they go to buy a piece of property or when they're first starting to shop are dreaming about having a nice little stream or a wetland or something that they can look over, the ability for them to utilize those, for their own enjoyment, for beauty of their property, only really comes into play if their pockets are deep enough to get through the hurdle. I mean, the average wetland delineation, even for a simple one, is going to add, let's say, $6,000 to the overall cost of that build. And for a young family starting out, that's a concrete apron and their sidewalk going to the house. I mean, we end up with, and the problem is that there is really only flexibility if you can hire a professional. I couldn't do my own research and write my own habitat assessment and be able to meet those same factors doing my own work. And that's where I really have a problem with what our state is doing to us. And I say our state, I don't want to put that on these guys. They're working within a system that they've been kind of forced on. I'm in environmental health. I work in the same thing. There's things that I agree with, things I disagree with, but we're working within a system. So where I get frustrated with all this is when I hear about all the flexibility that's being built in, but then I also understand that flexibility is only there for those within Washington State that have deep enough pockets that they can manage it. That's my soapbox moment.
Do you have any solution or?
I've talked with Adam about it. What I would really like to see if we're going to work on some flexibility is working on some flexibility to allow for some prescriptive stuff that the homeowner that's ambitious enough to take his time to learn something could actually be able to do some of this, or, you know, we do have college classes that are available for, the biggest problem that we're dealing with right now with environmental planning, part of the reason why those costs are so high is we've only got a handful of people that can even meet the requirements to do the reports. So, you know, when you're already booked out 3-4 months and you've got somebody calling wanting you to do something right away, that price is high. You know, and I can't blame the people for putting a high price on their time when they don't have the time to breathe. You know, so where I would really like to see some flexibility worked on big time is creating some flexibility, and it's through multiple different things, not just with planning, but I would love to see anything we can do to create more flexibility to allow the homeowner to be able to meet the demands and the needs without having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars with professionals, and then only need the professionals when they're real things that are trying to be done. I mean, if you're trying to build within 50 feet of a creek with a setback of 75 feet, and you just need to do a little bit of buffer averaging and some habitat stuff. I mean, I would love to see some kind of prescriptive, you know, if you do this and you do this, we may be able to do this, you know, so that we could kind of, number one, take the burden off the industry since we have such high standards for professionals. And number two, to give some power back to the homeowners to be able to do something on their own with their property to make what they want to have happen.
But does a plan like this allow for that type of leniency, Adam?
I have asked that question already, because I think yeah, buffer averaging is a great example. You know, it's like we have a set buffer width. We understand there's an allowance where you can reduce it here and increase it over there. It doesn't seem all that complicated. I don't know, have you ever encountered a prescriptive approach amongst other jurisdictions? Is there something we can beg, borrow, steal, and adopt locally for that? That would be something to look into.
Yeah, I'd say that, you know, the hard part is definitely just getting that delineation done, because, you know, it all has to, you know, the mapping is that you see a lot of the times is very broad and trying its best to follow where the water is, but, you know, it really has to be ground truth, which I think is, yeah, the most difficult hurdle. And, you know, as we're presenting here, we are still taking a prescriptive approach like many other jurisdictions. The WDFW site potential tree height model would be a really case by case approach to assessing the trees on site. So we're trying to keep with that type F, type NS, type NP. You know, WDFW's framework is really more all streams have to follow site potential tree height, and you know, it still follows with, or, you know, this prescriptive approach of categorizing water bodies is the same way we're approaching wetlands here. In other jurisdictions do that as well. Yeah, I think it's just that tough piece of the delineation, finding where those buffers and water bodies run.
Maybe a subsection allowing Adam to use an AI analysis.
Let's see.
Well, you know, I don't think it's as fast as that is growing and the progress it's making on being more accurate and better information. I don't think that's such a wild idea down the road. I really don't. It's going to have a lot of uses, and it can gather information much quicker than probably a phone call to some expert. And it's just a matter of it getting to be more accurate. And you're already starting to see AI vendors that like specialize. I used the example of this board. There's AI vendors now that you can take your meeting and they'll condense it, and they can tell you, hey, when Hal brought up the AI thing, you can go right to that spot. I mean, they're kind of specializing in areas. So I think that could possibly happen at some point in time.
Probably closer to communication.
I think so.
We put a clause in there that allow you, if we use that, we could be ahead.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think all our departments in the county should have the ability, when the timing is right and the technology is right, that they have the ability to go to use some of that technology.
Mind that I'm civil engineer here in town, land development, engineering type stuff, and I'm not a critical areas person. I have consultants to take care of that stuff, but if we're piggyback on what Travis is saying, one of the things that always seems like it becomes a problem, and if you're going to be doing something, you're trying to allow the homeowner to be able to do something, they're not gonna have the same tools that I'm gonna have, or even the same resources, you know what I mean? So as soon as if you're gonna be able to allow them to submit something, there's gotta be some latitude that, so that they don't have to have a surveyor come out, you know, 'cause every time you have one of those consultants come out, that adds cost. That's where it jacks that kind of stuff up, and so, I'm giving you an example, like even with, we've been dealing with private roads for a long time and trying to find ways to keep people like me from simple private roads. The whole goal was to try to not have surveyors have to go out, not have to have an engineer do that kind of stuff. But it becomes real difficult because if the county requires a certain set of standards when they're submitting stuff that is beyond what the normal person could ever be able to do, then it doesn't really make a difference. If you open the code up for them to be able to do it, it's so difficult that they're just gonna have to hire somebody else to take care of it for them anyways, because they don't have to be able to do that. There's no way that they're gonna be able to run a GPS unit and go out and do an actual topo on their site to get guaranteed, like, hey, here's the ordinary high water mark and tie that exactly in. I mean, if we're gonna go that route, which I would prefer, there needs to be some kind of thought that goes into like what is going to be acceptable for the county to be able to receive, be able to feel comfortable with what they're doing.
I think a good way to approach it is to have that flexibility, site flagging, marking the perimeter marking. And if the drawing is not exactly correct, but they flag things, you can do the site review with the drawing in hand. Everything kind of matches on the buffers that they're showing on where they're setting aside. But that's a question kind of later on down the road, but I agree 100%. I just know that as things keep moving forward, we're not gonna, as the industry's not gonna be able to keep up with the demand period. I mean, we're already at max. I can tell you right now, we're not even in the busy season and I'm almost a month out in my industry. So.
You know, I think a decade ago, stormwater was that kind of issue where laws changed at the state level and then at the local levels, and it mostly requires a stormwater engineer or a civil engineer to get involved in major development projects. So that, yeah, and minor, right? So that, you know, that just became the lay of the land when you do site development.
But of course, with everything, expectation gets so high that, you know, a normal person looks at it like, this is all Greek to me. I mean, terminology, let alone being able to produce documents jurisdictions are asking for, even on a 3,000 square foot of new impervious surface project. I mean, it's a house.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I have to hire somebody. That's frustrating. I don't want to do those kind of projects. I do because, you know, those people need their stuff done, but when you make it so hard for them to even be able to do stuff they're supposed to be able to do, it's a thing. I feel for them.
Well, I'd like to believe somebody with a 100-foot tape measure and a high school education could probably come out pretty accurately and meet the standards. However, a lot of high school education people nowadays can't read a tape measure. So I don't know the ins and outs of fixing that.
Unfortunately, we're seeing exactly what's happening too, is that they don't want people to have the American dream to be able to get your 5 acres and build your house and live in happiness. They want to push you into the city. They want you to be in multifamily. They want you to be confined. And I'm sorry, but that's the reality today. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for communities like ours. That's why people come here, is for the quality of life here. And it's more and more difficult.
Yeah, there's a lady had her hand up.
We're getting complaint because we are live stream, so we need to get you up to a mic so people on stream can hear you.
Thanks, Tabitha. Just up there by Mark.
Tabitha Reeder, Port of Kalama. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My mom voice is pretty good, but this is better. I just had a basic question. On page 5 of the slides, it talks about public agency and utility exemptions. Would ports be public agencies under this approach?
I believe so. I'd have to see if there's any guidance language that would negate that, but I don't think so. And I
would
think
think-
though to
Okay, and would it be kind of clarified in the text of the code so that that's clear? Okay, thank you. I also just want to add that working with county staff is great, and I really appreciate the flexibility like buffer averaging. That is very helpful for folks in my industry, so thank you.
I have a question for the gentleman next to Travis that spoke up, the developer. Are you, outside of the cost, are you referring to systems and protocols that we have in place that are encumbering the homeowner?
Well, just for example, I've got one right now that I'm working on. We're not planning clearance. There's been some extenuating circumstances that have added a little bit more cost to it. However, the habitat assessment was $4,500. You've got to have some updates to that habitat assessment, so it's going to get another $1,500 to it. I don't know what critical areas permits, all the different planning clearance permits and stuff, those are probably going to account to about just roughly $2,000 on top of that. So it's a single 5-acre parcel, so he's going to be, by the time he's done with just the planning clearance portion of it, he's going to be into it probably $7,500. So that's just a regular real world. That would be between $7,500 and $10,000 would be the expected cost on any parcel that I find that's going to need a full habitat critical area assessment. In additional cost on top of building and everything else that goes along.
And so are you suggesting that we can change the way that we do things to bring that cost down?
I would say if we can figure out on simpler stuff, ways to prescriptively mitigate, there's always going to be sites where we've got real concerns and real things that we have to address. And there's never going to be a prescriptive plan that's going to address everything. But yeah, there's certain things like where we've got a type N stream and we've got tons of stream frontage and we've got a wide open piece that's all in field grass that's got no habitat going to the stream. I can see a world where it would be super easy to put together some prescriptive mitigation measures to where we could say, yeah, we can reduce that 25 year by enhanced stuff here. But it's going to be on a case by, I mean, I don't think there'll ever be a place where it's not going to be on a case by case basis. But I guess the biggest thing is that I would like to see is when we have, I don't know, when you guys go out for critical areas. So when you get a site plan in that says, hey, we've got things we're going to need study, do you go out before to verify that, or do you only go out once you get the critical areas application out?
We typically go out before, especially if there's question.
Yeah. So
If there's no question that there's a critical area there, like a sheer cliff face, which qualifies as a steep slope hazard, we may not go out to verify before we say, hey, and go ahead and provide your report because you chose to develop this property with the sheer cliff face. Like, let's see the evidence. But yeah, if there's any question, we're going to go out and put eyes on it. And, you know, it's,
So I think, again, this is a case, probably something we're looking into some, hey, we're already going to be going out, taking a look at the site. Is this a site that we can do some prescriptive mitigation on, or is it a site that we need a full assessment for critical area? And that being said, I'm definitely not advocating for making these guys do that assessment and doing their own mitigation, their own buffer averaging, any of that stuff, because I've seen where that goes in other counties that do offer that as a service. And I found that you get virtually no flexibility once the guys have made up their mind on what they're looking at. But I would love to see it in a situation where, as part of that assessment, yeah, this is going to require a professional, or yeah, what we're dealing with is a pretty simple scenario. Here's some prescriptive if you choose to approach it. I don't know how we would put that into writing, but
So when you use the term prescriptive, are you saying we would based on the circumstances of that piece of property, identified these are the things that you could do, we would give them those options?
Yeah, the state already has the documentation. Mitigation, approved mitigation measures. You know, buffer averaging approach, it's just a matter of getting that. Yeah. Be successful. I know that's pretty outside the box on what you see anywhere else, but
Yeah, I mean, you kind of described it. If the planning staff or the county brings its own expertise out, you know, the incentive is to follow the code. If you hire your own expert, they work for you. Just like hiring an architect, you engage that professional and get your project where you want it in the budget that you want. That's not gonna be an option if the planning staff had that expertise and we were the ones doing that review with you, right? So, it probably benefits you more to have your own professional that you're paying, engaging in the options with you. Yeah, like, you know, that simple scenario that, you know, it's like they're almost able to avoid, but they just need to buffer average right here, you know, and that
But they still spend.
mitigation is spilled out. It, like ground truthing, right? So that, knowing exactly where the beginning and end of that buffer is, we would just be guessing. We're not the biologists, in this scenario that have the background to identify the.
And you know how to work tape measure.
Yeah, we've got a few different measurement tools in the office. And we even have some science background, but again, you know, we're in the position of reviewing and applying the rule book.
This could be the toughest part of the update.
Yeah. Yeah. I would, Adam, here's what I would ask you. And I'm not looking to push anybody out. I'll stay if you still have stuff you want to do, but I want to know that you must have had some kind of idea when you brought us together, information you wanted, or, you know, I want to know that you've kind of gotten a sense of what you need from us, or direction, or you feeling.
Yeah, and both groups get to weigh in and review this draft.
Okay.
Both groups will have an opportunity to vote on a recommendation and approval. Doing this joint was super helpful, and I really
Okay.
appreciate all of your time and your attention today.
And I know Planning Commission is gonna go next door and still have some questions or whatnot.
Yeah, so that's an option. We did go longer than anticipated, but if
Yeah.
there's more,
Well,
we're gonna just
I'll
walk
leave
over
it
there.
up to Planning Commission what they want to do, but, and I'm glad you brought, I see BPAC folks in here. I think that's good input. So you feeling like this is worth your time?
100%. I really appreciate everybody's attention.
Okay.
We prepared, we talked about every one of these questions. We've worked real hard to keep that toolbox, as full as possible.
Anything, you guys, we're good?
I appreciate the effort you guys have put into it, knowing the way that this board thinks. I think you've done a great job to mitigate those efforts towards leaning the way that we lean. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and effort.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate everybody participating. I sincerely mean that. It's always nice to have experts in the room. So thank you for your time. We will adjourn.